Alright, on the bench this week I have the guitar from the dead man's house. I don't believe it's haunted, but you never know. It's a Cremona classical guitar model, I don't know. I've had it for about 25 years or so. Sat in the corner of the jam room as wall art because everyone's afraid to touch it. Figured I'd give it a worthy refresh, and being that it's Halloween season, I'm going to tell you why we call it the guitar from the dead man's house, a bit about the special person that gave it to me, and also a creepy but true haunted house story from when I was a kid. If all that appeals to you, stick around. Okay, here's the plan. I'm going to clean, lube, and restring. I'm going to clean the body with some wood cleaner, follow it up with some spray wax. I'm going to lube up the fretboard with some oil, clean and lube the tuners, polish the frets, and then restring with some light nylon classical strings. It's been kept in a regulated temperature area since I got it all those years ago, but that being said, I was going to start this last week, and I was taking the photos, and I noticed the decal was peeling off, so I ordered up a replacement that I think is really going to spice this up. Well, let's crack on. So the guitar from the dead man's house was given to me by my grandmother in the late 1990s. She passed just last year. She's been on my mind a lot lately. And I truly thought that, she would outlive me. She was always super active. Like, here's a picture of her riding a scooter in the 1990s. She's probably like in her late 50s there. A few years after this, she took a trip around the world with her brother. She went bungee jumping in New Zealand, went skydiving. She's just an amazing woman. So I spied this guitar at the jam room, and my brother, Vic Hucklebuck, reminded me it was the guitar from the dead man's house. How it got that name. She was always really committed to, community and her church, always willing to help out anyone in need or volunteer for a worthy cause, And I think she was involved with somehow helping elderly church members. And she knew this one elderly gentleman and helped him out a lot when he was alive. And then I think helped the church when they moved his belongings after he passed. I was visiting her one day, and before I left, she said, wait, I almost forgot. The guitar from the dead man's house. And she went in the other room and came back with this. And he would have wanted you to have it, she said. So I'm like, okay, thanks. So, she told me, where it came from. It wasn't morbid or anything. But I was moving around a lot back in my 20s, so it ended up at Vic Hucklebuck's. And I remember bringing it in. I told him it was the guitar from the dead man's house, and he said, don't bring it here. But, it's a guitar, and he's not cruel enough to, leave an instrument out in the rain, so he took it in. Seems to be giving off some good juju so far. He has fantastic luck. I spend every day waiting for life to give me another nut shot, however. Get in there. A little bit of rust buildup on a couple of these. Let me see if I can just run the X-Acto through. Open it up a little bit. I wonder how much of this I can... There we go. I think the more of this I get off, the better. Look at that. Alright, you want to hear my creepy ghost story from when I was a kid? I actually wrote this down a couple years ago as kind of a creative writing exercise. I hadn't used that muscle for years. But it was still there. It's kind of long-winded and over-descriptive, so I'm going to kind of give you the Cliff Notes version here. I'm going to tell you some private stuff, but I'm going to keep it 100. So these events took place over 40 years ago. I want to say 1981 maybe. And I always wondered if what I saw was like paranormal activity or just the overactive imagination of a traumatized 7-year-old and his cousin. This is basically a year of my life. It was like year 2 of a 4-year span when my life was kind of always in flux. But however, these experiences only happened in this one house. So I was 6 when my parents got divorced. My mom got an apartment in the same school district, so it wouldn't be awkward for me. Well, we were up in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York, and it was kind of becoming difficult for her to get help from my grandparents and my aunts that lived like 40 minutes away, you know, back in town, so to say. So when the lease was ending at the apartment, I'm saying May 81, she started looking for someplace closer to the family, and a friend of a friend was remodeling a house, or a house trailer, actually, double wide. It was a great deal, perfect location, but it wasn't going to be ready until December. And we couldn't stay at the apartment, and she really wanted this house, so she dropped the news that we were going to be moving in with my aunt and uncle, and live there until our new place was ready. So I'd be able to share a room with my cousin Bobby. He was 2 months older than me, and he was like my best friend ever. And I'd get to hang out every day with my cousin Lisa. She was 2 years older than me, my second best friend ever. And I was completely horrified at this, thought of this. Now, why would I be horrified? To live with my 2 best friends and my favorite aunt and uncle? Well, my cousins and I were convinced that the house they lived in was haunted. So my aunt and uncle moved around like a lot. And it wasn't like unusual for them to move like 2 or 3 times a year. It seemed normal at the time, but I recently asked Bobby a few years ago how many places they moved to, and he couldn't quite remember all of them, but he did figure out one year they moved almost 5 or 6 times. So there was always new houses and neighborhoods to explore, and since we were thick as thieves and the 3 Musketeers, there was always fun to be had. So by the time my mom dropped the news, they'd been at this current place for about 2 months. I visited the first day, like I did most weekends, and what I remember about that first day, you know, I got to see their new rooms and all that, and explore the house. We played for a bit, we got kicked out, and I had to go use the bathroom. And the bathroom was at the end of a long hall, and there was a door off the hallway. I didn't know where it led, but it kind of creeped me out. So I made it to the bathroom, left, but was still creeped out by this door. And, you know, it's the middle of the day, beautiful spring Saturday. And so we ran around outside for the day. Went to Cumberland Farms down the road, little convenience store. Those old brick ones. They had that certain smell. I think it was all the Freon leaking in there. So we got some penny candy. Went down by the railroad tracks, met some neighborhood kids. It was a small neighborhood, but it was still like a really urban area. There was a lot of houses right next to each other. They were probably all built by the same developer or whatever. They were, you know, all kind of double-deckers. Depression era, maybe. is when they were built. So they were kind of old. We ran into these kids. They were playing with firecrackers. They were putting them into their shoelaces and lighting them up and daring each other. Bobby and I passed the test. And it wasn't bad with one firecracker, but this one kid tried to do like 2 or 3 and it blew the laces of his kids off. Like in the cartoons, you know. Thought that was funny. Remember he ran home crying. I don't remember if there was blood. But we did go from the tracks. We followed the tracks down to a graveyard that was next to a baseball field. Ran around the bases, climbed on the dugout. And later on, this is just a side story, later on, the baseball field was kind of swallowed up by the property of the graveyard. And both my maternal grandparents are right there on that third base line. That's where they're buried, right where we were playing. And then not too far from that, my cousin Lisa is buried. So it's weird. It's all this one spot in upstate New York, you know. Bizarre. So later that night, when we got back to the house after day, if you were Gen X, you remember that. Come home when the street lights came on, you know. And probably after dinner, we were probably playing Atari in the living room or something. And I had to use the bathroom before my mom got there. And that meant I had to go past that door again. And this time I was kind of scared. I had Bobby go with me. And he kept guard. But as we were going back past the door, I could have sworn that I heard somebody banging on it. And we both ran down the stairs as fast as we could into the living room where everybody's like, what's going on? My mom probably picked me up, you know, not too long after that, and we went home, and thanking God I didn't have to stay there for the night. Alright, second incident. I did not witness this one myself, but this is still before we moved in. It was a Saturday. My mom was probably working. Went to spend the day with them. I remember we were crushing bowls of cereal, so it must have been the morning. They were very excited to tell me about what they saw the day before. They were in the living room playing the Atari, sitting on the floor in front of the TV. My aunt was watering her plants, and those were by the front window, faced the front of the house and the street. And a ball of light came down the stairs, floated past the front door into the living room, and started floating across the room. It was almost as if it was like on a string. It was like guided, and it just bobbed a little bit, as if it was just floating, like a balloon that's lost its, helium. And at some point, I think my aunt freaked out because they all watched it. All 3 of them watched it and turned their heads as it came into the room. I think she freaked out and said something like, "Get the F out of my house." And it shot around the room and zigzagged across the plants and then just disappeared. And when my cousins were telling me about it, my aunt in the other room told them to not talk about it, because I don't think she wanted to encourage it at all. So you can see why in May, when my mom told me we were going to move into this house, I was horrified. A little grease here to put on these. So my uncle carried all the boxes up to the attic when we moved in. We worked up the courage to go behind him. And my uncle could whoop a man's ass. So he went first. And, I was expecting a cobweb-covered granny attic with, like, rocking chairs, old lamps, steamer trunks, the stuff you saw in Scooby-Doo. But the attic was completely empty. And it was clean. Sort of. Light streamed through the windows. And it actually seemed kind of pleasant up there. The stairs came in like a little off center of the room, and to the left was like the front of the house, and that was over the bathroom. And that's where my uncle stacked the boxes into a neat cube. And they'd be there ready for us to take to the new place in December, you know. And that was, like I said, that was above the bathroom. So to the right of the stairs was a very large open area. And, you know, it seemed huge, but I was 7. And on the far wall was a large, like a dormered alcove. That would be directly above our bedroom, I think. It was maybe 8 by 10 foot. And while we were moving stuff up there, my uncle said, you know, we can play up there if we wanted to. And he put, you know, my boxes with my toys and stuff out on the edge of this big cube that he made. So if we wanted to get them out, we could. And one thing up there was my big wheel. And it was not just any big wheel. It was a Dukes of Hazzard model. And it was badass. I just got it for my birthday. And, you know, nowadays I couldn't even imagine what the overtime my mom had to work to buy it. This new place was kind of on a busy street. Like I said, it was sort of in the city. So we were told, you know, we'd only be able to use it in the attic. So the main part of the attic was pretty large space. So we could really ride pretty fast around the thing. We'd pretend that the alcove was like our garage and do repairs on the big wheel. It was probably Cooter's garage, if I remember correctly. Is that how those went? Yeah. So my fear of the hallway and the attic kind of went away. Summer was underway, and if we weren't out, you know, running the streets, we were up in the attic. Kind of brings us to incident 3, which I don't know if this was my uncle messing with us or what, but I don't know, you be the judge. One day, you know, I'm zooming around in circles in the attic on the big wheel, and I hear Lisa say, "Bobby, put that down," or something. And I stopped, and I saw him examining a knife. So the attic was unfinished. It was like bare stud walls, like all the way around. And there was horizontal blocking that ran around the entire room at like 3 to 4 foot height, maybe, whatever eye level is for a 7-year-old. So Bobby says he just found it there in the first stud bay of the alcove. Now, we've been playing here for weeks, and we didn't notice that before. That was weird. This is, you know, our big wheel garage. You know, and we never saw that. So I checked the knife out too. It was like a folding jackknife, and I remember how to fold it up and open it because my grandfather kind of taught me how on his buck knife. So it was a folding jackknife, I'll tell you that. So we put that back, and we checked every piece of blocking in the attic for any more kind of treasures, you know. It was basically like little shelves all around the room, and we found nothing. Some days later, maybe it was, you know, a week or whatever. Who knows, kid time, right? So, you know, we went up there and the knife was gone. But in the bay next to it was a bigger one. And this one was like a Bowie knife, sort of. It wasn't folding at all. It was, you know, had a handle and like a guard by the blade. And it was just as old and rusty as the first. But we didn't see it there the first day we were there. That always was weird to me. I always, you know, maybe it was my uncle messing with us, but, you know, he had better things to do than be messing with us. Stuff like that, you know. He was hardly home, you know. He was out working too. So summer brought crazy heat to the attic, and we didn't go up there much. Lisa became friends with the girls next door, and Bobby and I sometimes invited if they needed boys to play whatever they were doing, you know. So one day out of the blue, they told us they used to play with a girl that lived at the house we lived in. But she moved away when either her mom or dad was killed in the house, like upstairs somewhere. This happened the year before my cousins moved in, but I remember we pressed for more information, but like that was all that she knew. Went online and I found this decal. Supposed to be able to cover that. I looked it up. It was the same size. And it lines up pretty good. And I think that's really going to spice it up. It's a real deep red. I don't know if it comes across on the camera there, but it's a really, really nice sparkly red in there. I'm going to start, I think, starting it down here, moving it up, and when I get up to where the neck is, I'll kind of custom trim these. What do you think? Plan? Let's do it. What I'm going to do is tear the tape here and here. That way I can work on where they meet separately. What do you think about a razor blade? So fall rolled around, I was excited to start school. Until my first day. I was totally country mouse and this place was freaking huge. It was 3 floors. We wanted to talk about Star Wars or Pac-Man. Every kid just wanted to fight. I was like a complete fish out of water. Thank God I had Bobby. He was like a scrapper. He used to be in the new kid. He went to like 5 schools a year for f***'s sake. Anyway, life was sucking. My first 6 years were pretty regimented, but it was like a free-for-all there. I wasn't seeing my mom much. She worked a lot. It was like no set bedtime living there. I was like up until all hours. I was being bullied daily. Pretty sure I was malnourished. We didn't bathe or shower much because it didn't work. So baths were in the sink or at my grandmother's if we went there. So there's one fall day we went to play in the attic, and all the boxes were like strewn across the floor. Like not in the neat cube they'd been on the left of the stairs. Now they were laid out randomly, like the backside of the attic. This drastically impeded our big wheel track. We didn't know who did it, my mom, my uncle, but they were spread out, stacked. You know, I don't know, even if my mom was looking for them, she'd just kind of bring them random places and sort through them. I don't think so. So it just seemed odd, but looking back on it now, maybe that's what happened. My mom was sorting them, but it just seemed odd. And both Bobby and I were kind of done with the attic. That brings us to Incident 5, or A Ghost Rode My Big Wheel. So I'm going to tell you the big finale in just a sec, but I just wanted to show you this. That went on beautiful. Really like that. And it's got a little cellophane on the front. I'm going to peel off now. Oh, look at that. Sweet. It's a little bit more raised than I would have liked it, but I don't know. It's the coolest one I saw in there that was kind of unique, you know. I'm going with it. I'm going to go with these Ernie Ball Earthwood strings. They're nylon classic ball end. I've been using these on a couple different projects lately when it comes to classical guitar. Mostly for the price, but they play good too. I don't mind them. I don't play much classical guitars, so however long they last is however long they last. So remember when I told you we had no bedtime living at this place? Bobby and I had bunk beds. We constantly fought over who got the top bunk. We'd be up late, telling jokes, laughing, farting around. You know, just being 7. Anyway, one night, couldn't decide who was getting the top bunk. So we both jumped up there and we claimed our spots. And we're giggling like crazy, saying, "No, it's my turn. No, it's my turn. No, mine. No, mine." And we heard the sound. That still chills me to this day. Now, if you're unfamiliar with a big wheel, it's like, you know, a tricycle. With the seats low to the ground, tiny, wide rear wheels, you know. They were made entirely of hollow blow mold plastic, and They were like the ride du jour for little kids from the 60s through the 80s. And they made a distinct sound when riding due to the hard plastic hollow tires, whether it's on pavement or hardwood floors. So as we're in the middle of a giggle fight, the big wheel rolled fast, loud, and hard in the attic directly above our head. The top bunk, it's like 3 feet to the ceiling, and we're right below the alcove. So we both froze, we looked at each other, and we both jumped to the bottom bunk. Needless to say, we now spent every night arguing over the bottom bunk. That was the last incident, but the most terrifying for me. Of course, I didn't witness the glow sphere, but yeah, that was extremely terrifying. I didn't see a ghost. That sound of that big wheel going across the hardwood floor right above my head will always be there. We finally moved out into our new house like just after Thanksgiving, and I started at a new school. I made fast friends, and my mom finally didn't have to work so much, and I kind of went back to a routine meant for a kid, not like a hippie biker. My aunt and uncle finally moved out of the haunted house the following spring. And it kind of made it the longest that they had ever kind of stayed at one place. They were almost there a year. But their cycle of moving kind of slowed down after that. It was kind of to twice a year, but they still couldn't stay in one spot. And, I've experienced odd things in my life since then. Crazy coincidences, instant karma, trail magic. But I haven't run into the paranormal really since. I hear some stuff, but I'm not trying to listen to it. Get in there. So many years later, I was discussing these events with Bobby, and we tried to come up with rational explanations to the occurrences. He proposed that his dad was placing the knives to mess with us. I don't know. Like I said, it seems pretty elaborate, and he had better things to do than to mess with us. But what about the big wheel rolling, Maybe my uncle moved the boxes, maybe my mom moved the boxes, but I didn't see the glowing orb. My cousins did. I have no explanation for that. I think that was probably the creepiest thing of that whole thing. It's probably the one he holds with him. It's the sight of that orb. I think that's like one of the first things he'll bring up when we talk about that house. The new place was great. It was in a secluded neighborhood, like dozens of cool kids, and I remember my mom asking me why I didn't ride around my bitchin' Dukes of Hazzard big wheel, with my new friends, and I think I probably kind of lied and said, I think I'm too old for the big wheel. I recently looked up that house on Google Maps. I can never forget the address for the rest of my life. Show some screenshots here. This is like the front of the house, and directly over the door there would have been the bathroom. And to the left of the front door is the front window. That's where my aunt kept her plants. The window above was Lisa's room. And the one at the top is the attic. And right below this window is where my uncle neatly set up those cubes of boxes. The alcove dormer can kind of be seen up here on the left of the house. And Bobby's bedroom is right below it. That's the place. Of course, I'm not going to tell you the address. If it's your house, I wish you luck. Because I ain't ever going there again. Like I said, my grandparents are buried right down the end of the street. You could probably actually see the house or at least the beginning of their street from the graveyard where they're buried. And I will go visit them, but I won't even look at that road. I don't like it. Do you ever feel that? Like someplace in the universe where it's just like you're not meant to be here. This isn't your spot. But you move down the road a little bit, and now you feel totally fine. What's your ghost story? You ever hear anything coming from the house? I did see a ghost once when I was real little. Probably about 3 or 4. I think maybe I'll save that one for next Halloween. So there's no truss rod in this, so putting it under full tension really kind of bows the neck up. I've tuned it down to a dad tuning. I might even try to go lower than that, but still the action at the 12th is about a 1/4 inch high, way higher than I'd like to have it. I did file down the saddle a little bit just to get it as low as I could, and that's as low as I dare go. Made a little bit, but not much. I'll show you how it plays. It's not great. So yeah, I got to tune to that dad tuning to kind of release some tension, make the neck fall back a little bit, and it does, but the action is still really high. Not much I can do about that. I could probably put it in traction for, a couple months, and try to bring the neck back around. There's no truss rod in it, so there's really nothing to do with that. And it's not really a desirable guitar anyway. It's probably still going to be a wall hanger, but I mean, at least it's got some strings on it. It's cleaned up a little bit. I was having fun doing some just regular doom chords you can do in a dad tuning, so. You could do that kind of stuff on it, but that's about it. I think it's just going to be a wall hanger, a good luck wall hanger. So that's the story of the guitar from the dead man's house. So there you go, the guitar from the dead man's house. Nothing to be afraid of. This one's probably going to go back to being a wall hanger, but at least we got it cleaned up, looking a little better. Got some strings on it. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining me. Give me a thumbs up for filming it for you, and we'll talk again soon.